Michael Popok, Legal AF. Remember last March when Tucker Carlson back on Fox News ran an entire program in which he said he has access to a secret cache of all the video surveillance tape from Jan 6 that he was given by Speaker of the House McCarthy, and he was going to make it available on a database to all defendants to try to overturn their sentences or, use a trial to avoid being convicted. Remember that? Right. That's exactly what happened. Absolutely nothing. Tucker Carlson got fired after the revelations of the Fox Dominion lawsuit and Dominion's charges against him and all the emails and texts. And he's gone off into the hinterland of, YouTube, social media, tweeting. But defendants believe this charlatan and have tried to argue that there's videotape somewhere buried in these thousands and thousands and thousands of hours from all these multiple cameras. Somewhere in there will show something that I didn't do. The shaman, Chansley, had so much evidence against him, he was one of the first arrested. He was arrested 2 days after Jan 6th on Jan 8th off a criminal complaint. 3 days after that, a federal grand jury indicted him for multiple counts, including criminal trespass and obstruction of official proceeding. He had 6 counts against him. His acts were so bad that he was pre-trial detained in the federal detention center or the DC jail. He eventually pled guilty. He had a lawyer, federal public defender. He pled guilty of 1 count of obstruction of an official proceeding in return for the federal government dropping 5 other counts. And he was sentenced to 41 months, which is what the federal sentencing guidelines said was appropriate. The judge took him at his word. He cried in court. He said he was sorry. He showed that he was contrite. He apologized to America, democracy, and the judge. He did all the right things. The judge took him at his word, said, okay, you seem like you're apologetic. Seems like you're going to turn a new leaf. Go serve your whatever it's left in jail, 35 months after credit for time served, and you'll be done. Well, Tucker Carlson, right around the time the guy came out of jail, has this big news program. Oh, I've seen the evidence, and I'm going to show you Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman. And here's some things where the cops don't stop him from entering the Senate chamber. They tap him on the shoulder. See, the cops invited all these people into the Senate chamber. You've heard this before. That is against the weight of all the other hours of evidence that show everything that Jacob Chansley did. Okay, with his spear, with his bullhorn, refusing to leave after being told by the overrun, outmatched Capitol Police that were outmatched 30-2 at every level, going into the Senate chamber, putting his feet up on desks, putting his feet up on Mike Pence's podium, grabbing the gavel, all that other stuff. Now he says, oh, Tucker Carlson, I saw a little video clip, 1 second, that could have helped me, and my lawyer never did it. I had ineffective representation of counsel, constitutionally ineffective. And there was other evidence that the government didn't turn over to me. So it's called if that happens, that's called a Brady violation, because there's a body of law under a case called Brady that says the government has to turn over to a defendant all exculpatory or potentially exculpatory evidence, meaning evidence that's likely to lead to the person's innocence or that they could use for their defense. Oh, Brady violation. I didn't get that 6-second clip that I saw on Tucker Carlson. And the judge is like, had it. All right. Because the judge already took his plea during the allocution, which is where the defendant has to say he's sorry, say that he's guilty, that he's making this plea of his own free will, that he's not being coerced, that he understands all the waivers that he's making. And then he was sentenced 3 months later, and he already served his term, but he doesn't like it because there's like buyer's remorse for all of these Jan 6 defendants who pled guilty already, but yet want to find a way to get their sentences vacated in some way. And the judge has had it. I'm going to read out loud to you a very, very pointed, detailed attack on Tucker Carlson and his bullshit that only a federal judge wearing a black robe can do. And it's in the end of the motion today or the order that the judge entered denying the QAnon shaman from having the ability to reverse his plea and have a new trial, because the judge is having 0 of that. And I'm going to read this for you verbatim. Finally, this is from the court's order. The court would be remiss if I did not address the ill-advised television program of March 6, 2023. That's Tucker Carlson and the video presentation. Not only was the broadcast replete with misstatements and misrepresentations regarding the events of Jan 6th, too numerous to count. The host, Tucker Carlson, explicitly questioned the integrity of this court, not to mention the legitimacy of the entire U.S. criminal justice system, with inflammatory characterizations of cherry-picked videos stripped of their proper context. In doing so, he called on his followers, that's Fox News viewers, to reject the evidence of their eyes and ears, Tucker's words, language resembling the destructive, misguided rhetoric that fueled the events of Jan 6 in the first place. That was Trump. The court finds it alarming that the host's viewers, Fox viewers, throughout the nation so readily heeded that call. The judge went on to say, members of the public who are concerned about the evidence presented in Mr. Chansley's case and others like that may view the public docket and even attend court proceedings in these cases. Those of us who have presided over dozens of cases arising from listening to hundreds of hours of testimony describing and reviewing thousands of pages of briefing about the attack on our democracy of Jan 6 know all too well that neither the events of that day nor any particular defendant's involvement can be fully captured in a seconds-long video, carelessly or perhaps even cynically aired in a television segment or attached to a tweet. Whose words are those? Senior Judge Royce Lamperth, in denying the motion by the QAnon Shaman, the fur hat, horn-brimmed, 6-foot pole, spear-walking insurrectionist who pled guilty to official proceeding obstruction and already served his time, but wants to come back to the court and recant his plea. And the judge took that opportunity to remind everybody that everything that Tucker Carlson said back in March was a lie, that none of the defendants that have been before federal judges have been able to get out from under their criminality or their liability based on other video angles and camera angles of their actions. See, Judge, in this one, it looks like I'm beating law enforcement with a pole. But in this other clip, earlier in the day, I'm having a cup of coffee near a cop and he doesn't say anything to me. So that was his permission that I could beat one of his other colleagues senseless. I mean, this is the argument, and I'm not stretching it that far. You can't take, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of angles of video and reduce it down to one frame and one 10-second clip like the QAnon Shaman did and said, see, aha, that's where he opened the door for me. Yeah, you got an outmatched Capitol Police of 2 against 30, and I'm sure they were doing everything to both, try to stop people without shooting them from entering the Senate chamber where they already were, like Jacob Chansley, and also fighting for their own lives. Okay, so they wouldn't die. We already had 5 law enforcement die as a result of January 6th, including on that day. And Royce Lamperth, along with the rest of the judiciary, save for 1 or 2 people that I can name, that are on that bench, have had it. And have had it with the attacks in social media from people who don't know any better and just pull things out of their backside and throw it up on a tweet where Fox News uses it. Jacob Chansley, the evidence against him was so overwhelming in terms of body cam, his own statements to reporters, contemporaneous with his attack on the Capitol, video of him walking around with his bullhorn, looking out for Mike Pence, calling him a traitor that should be hanged, saying that everybody else in there, should have been, lynched, going into the holiest of holy, the Senate chamber, putting his feet up on desks and refusing to leave, which is the essence of an insurrection and a takeover, right? They think it's some sort of hippie sit-in from the 60s where they sat in the dean's office because they didn't like the lunch choices at the cafeteria. I mean, that's not what this was. All you have to see is the video of the brutal beating of a number of law enforcement, dozens of law enforcement who battled it out at the West Tunnel. Blood on the steps, so much, so voluminous that one of the police officers testified to the Jan 6 committee and in court that it looked like for her what she had seen back in Fallujah when she was in the war. That's what Jacob Chansley participated in. That's why he got sentenced for 41 months on a plea deal. And that's why he's not able to reverse his plea now, because he's got buyer's remorse along with a bunch of other lunatics who think against the greater weight of the evidence, they would have won or they shouldn't have pled guilty. We're going to hold these traitors' feet to the fire on podcasts and on hot takes just like this one, only in one place, the MeidasTouch Network. That's where I do my work. That's where I contribute. You can find me here, Michael Popok, doing hot takes like this one about every day. If you like my style of presenting this information to you, go over to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel, subscribe to it for free. You can slide over to playlists, slide down a couple of spots to Michael Popok, and you'll get all of my hot takes in one place. Then on Wednesdays and Saturdays, I co-anchor and co-founded a legal and political podcast on the MeidasTouch Network called Legal AF. You can go watch us again, free subscribe, MeidasTouch YouTube channel, or anywhere you get your podcasts from. And if you like what I'm doing, Michael Popok, follow me on all things social media, now on Threads, at MS Popok. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram, at MeidasTouch, to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.